Look at this one. Woo! This is a pattern by Bruce Worthington, and it is called The Knock. And it's Jesus knocking at the door. And I love it. Yay! I went and had some copies. I only had 3 made, and I'm thinking I might need a lot more than 3 copies. But I have 3 to start with, and I did modify it a little bit. I mean, I love it, Bruce. But there are a couple things I modified. So, like taking out this, there's a 3rd picture here or something there, so I took that out, just made it brick and changed some other things up. Anyway, so I am going to start picking out my wood, and I know what I want for this. This is going to be aspen, and I'm not sure if I have a real reddish wood, so I'm looking in my pile to see if I do. I don't think I want to use Padauk because that's a little bit too orange. I mean, I love that wood, but I'd like his robe to be red. I have purple, but I want it to be red, just like the picture here. So, yeah. I'm excited to get started. Alrighty, so now I'm picking out the woods, and I ordered this piece of Bloodwood, and I thought, this should be Jesus's robe. So that's what I'm going to use for his robe. So I cut out all the pieces, and I put them on there. It's a very dense wood, so I'm curious to see how it's going to cut. But yeah, I think that'll be a good robe. I ended up folding up the pattern so I could make copies of certain areas with my printer. And that way I had all of the paper pieces I needed to attach to their respective wood. I'm using mostly wood I had in my stash. I did buy some wenge from a guy locally. And I showed you the Bloodwood that I had ordered. So some of the wood I'm using, I don't know what species of wood it is. It would be nice to know, but oh well. I used 3M77 to spray the back of the paper pieces, then placed them on the wood looking at grain direction and all that stuff. This aspen is pretty clear or doesn't show much grain, but I have noticed that the grain does show up a bit more after sanding and putting a finish on it. But even at that point it is very slight, so I just placed these on the boards so that they would fit. I started with softer wood, and most of them were pretty soft except the Bloodwood, the wenge, and the apple that I used for the skin. I used a number 5 modified geometry blade. A lot of these sections are segmented, which makes things pretty easy really. I didn't use a smaller blade to cut apart the segments. I just kept with the number 5 with everything. My reasons are because I've found smaller blades are harder to control and they tend to wander. And the curved spaces aren't going to bother me at all with this piece. Time to cut the Bloodwood! It's so heavy and dense. I'm a little bit concerned about cutting it. And I have some long pieces to cut, so yeah. I just need to cut it up. Maybe what I'll do is I'll cut this, and then I'll use my other bandsaw to cut these into smaller pieces. Yes, that's what I'll do. So I cut that line, and then you can see me over there in the back using my huge bandsaw to cut it into more manageable pieces. I was going to use my little bandsaw, but it has no blade at the moment, but the big one worked. Okay. Yay, I got them cut up into smaller pieces. Woo! That'll work. That will work. Hey. Woo. It's causing a lot of fumes, so I'm going to use my PowerCap Active Particulate IP Respirator. The Bloodwood was the most difficult to saw, and I went through about 4 blades cutting just those pieces. I put a piece of plexiglass over the pattern. It was a little smaller than the project, but I knew I would have to move it eventually, so this made the moving process a bit easier for about 3/4 of it anyway. I haven't counted how many pieces were involved, but it was a lot. And I hadn't cut apart the robe, the cobblestones, or Jesus's hair at this point. All those are segmented, so they'll be pretty easy to cut. And I used mineral spirits to loosen the glue bond between the paper and the wood, and it works really well for me to do it this way. There are a bazillion ways to attach your patterns to your wood, I recommend you do whatever you like best. So I used a little brush and I brushed it on all the paper, and the papers came off really easily. I left the papers on the parts I still needed to cut and segment, and after I did that, here is what it was looking like. I did move the entire thing to the other table to begin shaping. It was still a few feet away from the pneumatic drum sander, so I traveled back and forth. I have 100 grit on the drum to do the rough shaping. Here is his hair and how I was shaping it. I could have Intarsia-ized the pieces instead of leaving them segmented, but the grain of the wenge actually helped me out with that. And I think it looks fine. Anyway, I also used the belt sander a lot to thin the pieces out, and that sander was really close and it worked out really well. These pieces of blue pine that are the cobblestones on the ground were already pretty smooth, so I hand sanded them and added a nice soft edge to them. With all the other pieces, I took them to the flex drum to smooth them up with 220. The flex drum wasn't too far away, but I did travel back and forth to get to that sander too. We've had an odd week of snowfall. It's the middle of April! So weird! Not much stayed on the ground until the last day, which happened to be today, and we had just over 2 inches when we woke up this morning, and then a little bit more as the day went on. Craziness! And it's supposed to be 55 tomorrow!
Still snowing! Woo!
And after the flex drum, I hand sanded and smoothed the edges of each piece that hadn't been hand sanded already. You can see the long dark pieces I have there. They are going to be the frame. I'm told it's black walnut, but it looks different than walnut to me. Everyone around me says it looks like black walnut, so I'm not sure what my problem is. It is gorgeous wood though, absolutely gorgeous. To sand the fingers, I cut the sandpaper into strips and that sanded between the fingers with that, and it worked really well. Then when hand sanding the Bloodwood, I wore my PowerCap Active respirator again. It is really comfortable and not heavy, and I really like it. And I can wear my glasses with it on. I just can't wear big hearing muffs, but I can use smaller hearing protection. For the eye, I used aspen and a lighter brown wood. These are teeny tiny pieces, so I glued them together with Star Bond. And when the glue was set, I put them back in place for now. I measured out the frame boards and cut them to length. I'm using hardboard for the backer, and I'm placing a verse on the back. The laser shows up pretty good on the hardboard, better than the transfer method, but still not as easy to see if it were a light wood backer. Anyway, I'm putting Revelation 3:20 from the New Century version, and it says, "Here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and eat with you, and you will eat with me." I think that's the perfect verse for this Intarsia. I also put Psi on there and the date of April 2022. Then I started putting the Old Masters Polygel Satin finish on it, wiping it on and then wiping it off each piece. The aspen on the robe I wiped with Old Masters Pickling White Stain, and then I put a coat of the polygel over the top of that once it was dry. I didn't put any pickling white on the aspen of the eye, but for the robe I wanted it to be really white. It took 3 hours to put the finish on all of the pieces. The colors all popped out so pretty, and I couldn't wait to put it all together. The hardboard I had was smooth on both sides. Usually there's a bumpier side, but not on this piece for some reason. So I sanded it lightly with 120 grit paper just to give it some grip. Now was to move the whole thing onto the backer and assemble it. I was able to get it all put together except for the cobblestones. Luckily, I had taken a picture of it, so I was able to look at my picture and get the pieces to the right spots. I couldn't look at the pattern because I had altered the pattern, and so my pieces didn't match the pattern pieces. But I was able to finally figure it out and get it all together. I put the frame pieces around it and jimmied it all around, and once I had it where I wanted it, then I started gluing it up. I glued up some parts of the robe and let them set up, and then I started gluing more and more sections. I am using Tight Bond Quick and Thick. This stuff is definitely thick and sets up in about 20 minutes, if not quicker. It also dries clear, which is really nice. The little round things on the doors and the windows that goes on those little houses I glued directly on top, just like the sun. Then I used some Krylon triple thick to shine up the eye. And I was loving it. So I don't have these glued on because we're gonna mount it up on the wall, and then I'm gonna glue these over where we mounted it since we don't know where the studs are exactly. So, woo! Okay, I moved the frame boards off because I'm gonna take it downstairs and we're gonna try to put it up on the wall. That's our plan, anywho. And so there it is. Woo! It's huge! And I brought a ruler to measure. It's going to be a total of 37¼ inches tall and 30 inches wide. Cool! So this was awesome to make. I loved it. And some of the woods in here that I love are the sequoia. Oh, it's so pretty. And the blue pine. I always love blue pine. The bloodwood. Woo! Love that. Aspen. Love that too. Wenge or wenge. Love that. This purple it's poplar, but I call it purplar. You know, that has the purple streaks in it. Yeah. Sequoia, did I mention that already? I think I did. Yeah, and this is applewood. All of his skin. Yeah. I don't know what wood this was. Or this. But I put a little knot there for the sun. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. So let's go try to hang it up now. We have this spot above our hallway that's really tall, so we're gonna try to put it up there.
58½.
We found where some studs are, so Hub used screws along the bottom and the top to secure it to the studs. So I was able to permanently glue the sideboards on. I used Tight Bond Quick and Thick, and then I used Star Bond and 2P10 on them so that I could put them up there and it would hold tightly until that Tight Bond set up. And for the bottom boards, I used only 2P10 and Star Bond and a little bit on each end so that we could remove those boards easily if we ever have to move it. Hi, Gibbs. Hi, Wally. Hi. Hi, the puppy. Thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
Neat. And there he is, standing at the door knocking. Thanks for joining me, everyone, and I will see you next time.